Tatsinda by Elizabeth Enright, Chapter 2. Tandanan, the wise woman of the mountain, lived alone in a high, remote valley. No one knew her age, but since the oldest man in the kingdom could remember that in his childhood Tandanan had already been ancient, it seemed likely that she had been alive forever. She lived very humbly in a cave beside a waterfall. Titchkips, something like chickens but more intelligent, wandered in and out of the cave, which was furnished with a few sticks of furniture, some pots and pans, and a carved chest. There was no Toddle on the bare rock floor. Tandanan seemed to care nothing for ornaments or objects of beauty. She cared nothing for dress either. After you had seen her, you could never remember what she had been wearing. But she was wise in a way that no one else was, and her magic was reliable. "That is because I use it very seldom," she said. "In this way, it never wears out." It had been long established as a rule of the kingdom that each of the Tattirani would be allowed to ask one question of Tandanan, but only one in his whole lifetime. The consequence was that many a Tatran citizen went through life never feeling that his situation was grave enough to warrant the asking of the question, and so died without. There were others who squandered theirs foolishly. One man, for instance, had demanded to know the whereabouts of a stray Tip-Tod. "It's back at home," Tandanan told him severely, "and if you had stayed there yourself, you would have seen that it rejoined the flock an hour ago." This was true, and the man had used up his question for nothing. It could never ask another. Once a young girl had toiled all the way up the jagged path to inquire if she would ever have a husband. "Of course you will, you goose," said Tandanan. "So go home now and learn to cook." This sort of foolishness had caused the wise woman to print a message on a rock outside her cave, which said, "Waste not my time. Waste not your own. Ask only that which must be known." Reading this, a Tatran would sometimes reconsider, thinking, "Well, perhaps after all I had better wait. Perhaps, who knows, the time will come when my need to use the question will be even greater than now." Then he would turn and start home again, and Tandanan, watching him, would say to herself, "There goes a sensible man." It was a fine, sparkling day when Tabittina and Tatsinda started out on their journey to the wise woman. They walked through the town and beyond it across the upland pastures they knew well, and still on, always ascending, through meadows and fields, and then wild moorlands, up and up the narrow zigzag path. Chips of crystal rock flashed colored light. The telltale flowers were in bloom, sharp triangular white blossoms, and above them Tatran butterflies, called tatatines in that country, dipped and sailed and shimmered blue, every one of them, but many different sorts of blue. In the far woods, timticks called sweetly. Tatsinda skipped and bounded up the path. Then she would stop and wait for Tabittina to catch up, and then skip and bound ahead again. Tabittina huffed and grumbled a bit as she climbed. I used to run up the slope," she complained. "I used to leap, just as you are doing now, Tatsinda. Time's swiftness makes man's slowness." Tatsinda, waiting on a rock above, said, "I like your slowness. It's the way you are. I like it." Tabittina smiled up at her. "Well, you run on now, my wild timtic, my limber timber talk, and run and leap and jump and bound. At your age you're supposed to. Don't wait for me." Tatsinda was glad to obey. She was lively, and the day was bright, the air peculiarly delicious. She went springing up the winding path, and the first thing Tandanan saw of her was her bouncing hair, almost blindingly golden in the sunshine. "What an extraordinary spectacle," said Tandanan, who was always talking to herself. Of course she knew who the child was, though she had never seen her before. She knew a great deal about everybody on the mountain. "Mighty Lou, Tatsinda," she called. Tatsinda stopped short, looking up. The old woman, dressed in a hodgepodge of tatters, seemed the one dark thing on a bright day, but she smiled politely and said, "Mighty Lou, Tandanan." Mighty Lou was the Tatarani's way of saying hello, or how do you do. It was a contraction of the more ancient Tataran greeting, "My eye delights in the sight of you." "By the beautiful color of your hair, of course," replied the old woman. "Beautiful? But no one thinks it's beautiful. They think it is ugly. They think it should be white like theirs, and so do I." "It's hard for people to understand a beauty they're not used to," Tandanan said. "When they get used to it, they will appreciate it." "And my brown eyes, too?" "And your brown eyes, too. As for me, I find the sight of them most refreshing. That perpetual, eternal, everlasting, unrelenting, undeviating, and unmitigated blue-eyed look becomes monotonous, downright monotonous." While Tatsinda was sorting out the words she understood in this remark, Tabatina came groaning up the path and joined them. "Mighty Lou, Tandanan," she groaned. "Oh, my poor feet! Oh, my poor heart! Oh, what a terrible climb that is!" "Come and sit beside the waterfall, and I will bring you a cup of cold telquit nectar," said Tandanan. Tabatina sank down on a mossy boulder gratefully. Tatsinda picked up a tickatoo leaf and fanned her mother with it gently. "That's very refreshing, dear," said Tabatina. Then she dipped her fingers in the waterfall and dabbed her forehead with the icy drops. "Now I feel like myself again." Tandanan returned with 2 cups of cold telquit nectar and some Tiptod milk with honey in it for Tatsinda. They sat comfortably sipping and shouting conversation at each other above the noise of the waterfall. Tatsinda was allowed to finish her milk, but the moment she had done so, Tabatina said, "Now run along, dear. Go and play with the titchkips, or pick a bunch of telltales or something. Tandanan and I have things to talk about." Tatsinda moved away reluctantly. She did not think the titchkips were very interesting. All they did was warble and prowl and peck at food. There was nothing you could do with them but feed them or chase them. She wandered across the grass to the largest of the tekatoo trees and climbed up into its branches. From high up among the azure leaves, she could look down at the 2 women, one old and one ancient. She supposed that Tabatina was about to ask Tandanan her lifetime question at last, and being a lively, interested child, she was curious. But she had no intention of eavesdropping. It was only because the 2 old women, thinking they had lowered their voices, were actually still shouting above the noise of the waterfall. Without meaning to, Tatsinda heard them very well. "I brought her here so you could see her affliction for yourself," Tabatina was confiding at the top of her lungs. "Affliction? You mean the color of her hair and eyes?" Tandanan shouted back. "Why, of course! What else? Poor little creature! She's such a lovely child in every other way. I confess I had hoped in my heart, Tandanan. Oh, I know how reluctant you are to draw on your sorcery, but I had hoped that just this once you might be persuaded out of pity, out of charity, to practice a little bit of magic to make her hair white and her eyes blue. Couldn't you please, Tandanan, so that she will be like other people, so that she will be normal?" Tandanan shook her head slowly. "No, Tabatina, I never waste my magic on destruction." "Destruction?" "It would be destruction to alter what is beautiful already. And for all the wrong reasons, too. I'm ashamed of you. The trouble with the people in this mountain is that they are all blinded by custom. They only see what they're used to seeing, so they believe that what they're used to seeing is all that is worth seeing. Idiotic. They need to be jolted in a new view. Then they would realize that Tatsinda is beautiful in a new way. Tabatina sighed and got to her feet. Well, if you won't, you won't. We must make the best of it. But there's one other thing, Tandanan. I never asked you my question. May I ask it now? If you are quite certain that you wish to. I am certain, said Tabatina. But as she and Tandanan were moving away from the noise of the waterfall, they really did lower their voices, and Tatsinda never heard the question or the answer. On the way back, winding down the crooked path, Tatsinda walked thoughtfully beside Tabatina instead of leaping and jumping. Why has Tandanan no tottle? She asked finally. Well, I don't know, Tabatina replied. Tottles belong in houses, and I doubt if you can call a cave a house. I think I'll weave one for her, Tatsinda said. Tabatina thought it was nice for Tatsinda to be generous, though she was by no means sure that Tandanan would be pleased by the gift of a tottle. The bony discomforts of her home seemed to suit her. Tabatina was wrong, however. A few weeks later, when Tatsinda had completed the tottle, she did it up in a bundle, strapped it on her back like a knapsack, and trudged the long way up the path. The sun was hot, the bundle heavy. By the time she had reached the high valley, she was panting and dripping. Old Tandanan, surrounded by her flock of titchkips, was gathering teffits, a sort of mushroom, for her dinner. Mighty Lou, Tandanan, called Tatsinda. The old woman saw her and straightened up. Mighty Lou, child, she answered. But you know the question can't be asked by people less than 12 years old. But I haven't come to ask it, replied Tatsinda. I have woven you a tottle for a present, because I thought you needed one. She threw down the bundle with a sigh of relief, then opened it and spread it on the grass, snowy white with a pattern of blue timber stalks around the edge, alive and leaping. Why, Tatsinda! Why, it's beautiful, said Tandanan, for once almost at a loss for words. It's so beautiful. She inched her old self down and put out her bridled hand to stroke the silky surface of the tottle. Rock is a cold floor, she said. All my life I've wanted one of these. I'll help you move your furniture and put it down, Tatsinda offered, feeling proud of her handiwork. And when the tottle was spread out on the floor of the cave, warm and bright, the wise woman's home seemed a different place, in every way more pleasant. The titchkips, one by one, began prowling in to see what was going on. Shoo! Scat! Out! cried Tandanan, springing at them. Stay off my tottle from now on. Stay outdoors. When it was time for Tatsinda to leave, the old woman accompanied her to where the path began. Child, said Tandanan, when the day comes for you to ask your question, I want you to remember that I'm going to make you a present of a little magic, just enough to make one wish come true. But Tandanan, cried Tatsinda, that isn't why I gave you the tottle, so that you would give a present back to me. I know, the wise woman hastened to say. Just the same, remember what I have told you. You may be glad of it one day. Tatsinda thanked her warmly and promised to remember. Then she went running and singing down the path. Without the bundle on her back, she felt lighter than a leaf.